Stop crying, the flight attendant snapped, jerking the little girl's backpack strap. She stumbled, hitting the armrest. The twins beside her shouted, "She's just scared!" Passengers looked away, uncomfortable, guilty, all except one. Their mother rose slowly, her voice quiet enough to make the engines seem loud. "Take your hands off my daughter." He turned, smiling like cruelty was policy. "You people always think rules don't apply." And before anyone could react, he spat. Right between the three little girls, the cabin went silent. Even the air stopped. The mother wiped her daughter's cheek gently. Then she looked up, expression unreadable. "I want your name." "Sit down or be removed," he barked. "Removed," she repeated softly. "You mean grounded?" The seatbelt light pinged overhead. The captain's door opened, and someone inside said, "Ma'am, we've been expecting you." Welcome to Respect Wind Stories, a place where powerful tales come alive, and every word carries meaning. I would love to know where you are joining from today. Share it in the comments below. And while you do, sit back, relax, and let your heart open to a story that will move your soul and spark your imagination. Every story here carries a message, because in the end, respect always wins. Let us begin. Her name was Dr. Lena Carter, a behavioral psychologist specializing in power abuse. Flying home after a week of lecturing law enforcement on de-escalation, her triplets, Amira, Zuri, and Nala, were her world, her reflection, her proof that grace could live inside strength. The flight was supposed to be simple, until arrogance found a uniform. What no one on that plane knew, what the cameras couldn't see, was that Lena wasn't just a passenger. She was the government's lead advisor on airline discrimination policy, returning from a classified inspection. The man who spat on her daughters hadn't just broken decency, he'd violated federal law. The silence that followed the spit was heavier than turbulence. The engines hummed beneath it, steady and cruel, as if the plane itself were holding its breath. Dr. Lena Carter didn't shout. She didn't tremble. She took a napkin from the seat pocket and wiped her youngest daughter's cheek. The small gesture looked tender, but her hands were steady with something colder. Control. The flight attendant, name tag reading R. Tanner, straightened his tie and sneered. "Mom, you're disturbing the cabin. Sit down before I call the captain." Zuri clung to her mother's sleeve. Amira whispered, "Mommy, can we go home?" "You are home," Lena said softly. "Always." The passengers watched, phones hovering in hesitant hands. A woman across the aisle mouthed record it. The man in 13B started filming under his jacket. "Sir," Lena said, her voice as calm as a judge, "you assaulted 3 minors." Tanner barked a laugh. "Assault? Lady, you people play the victim for attention." "Keep testing me." A few heads turned sharply. "You people." The phrase rang like an alarm. Lena rose slowly. "Attention's what you'll get. Sit down," he snapped, stepping closer. His breath reeked of coffee and arrogance. "You think I won't have security waiting when we land?" She tilted her head slightly. "Security will be waiting," she agreed, "but not for who you think." Tanner blinked. The edge in her tone didn't sound like fear. It sounded like authority. "You threatening me?" "No," Lena said. "I'm giving you a choice," he scoffed. "You've got no power here, lady." "Funny," she replied, eyes narrowing. "That's what every man says right before I file my report." A few rows back, a mother whispered to her son, "Keep recording." The hum of quiet defiance spread through the cabin. Small lights blinked from phone cameras like fireflies, tiny witnesses gathering courage. The intercom buzzed. "This is Captain Harlow. Everything all right in the cabin?" Tanner snatched the receiver. "All fine, Captain. Just a non-cooperative passenger." Lena's lips curved. "Put him on speaker." "What?" "Put the captain on speaker," she repeated softly but with command. Passengers exchanged looks. Something about her tone, the absolute certainty, made Tanner hesitate. "Fine," he muttered, tapping the button. "Go ahead, sir," a man's voice crackled through. Who's speaking? This is Dr. Lena Carter, she said. Your flight is in violation of Civil Airway Code 52B, discriminatory conduct by service personnel in transit. The line went dead for a second. Then came the captain's voice, clipped and wary. Dr. Carter, as in Federal Oversight Carter? Correct, she said. You may want to check your live feed. Half your cabin is recording a hate crime in progress. A stunned silence. Then, soft, unsteady laughter from Tanner. You think I'm scared of your little act? Nobody believes these stories anymore. Lena met his eyes. That's the mistake everyone makes, she said. They think silence equals disbelief. But silence is just the sound before proof. Tanner's grin faltered. He turned toward the galley, fumbling for the service phone. I need ground control, he barked. Zuri's voice piped up, trembling but fierce. You shouldn't have done that to us. The child's words cut deeper than any threat. Passengers shifted, muttering. A man stood. She's right, we all saw it. Another joined in. She told him to stop. He spat on a kid! The tide was turning. The arrogance that had filled the cabin was shrinking fast. Tanner turned back, sweating now. You can't all gang up on crew. Lena interrupted, her voice still low, controlled. Sit down, Mr. Tanner, before you lose more than your job. He froze. There was something in her tone. An unspoken certainty that came from people who held access to consequences. She looked at the nearest passenger. Keep recording. Yes, ma'am, he said. Outside the windows, the sky stretched endless and blue, 30,000 feet of quiet judgment. Lena sat back down, gathering her daughters close. It's all right, she murmured to them. Sometimes justice just needs altitude. But as she said it, she noticed something strange. The co-pilot had stepped out of the cockpit, his expression unreadable, his badge turned inward. The real turbulence, Lena realized, hadn't even begun. The co-pilot's shoes clicked against the aisle carpet. Rhythm precise, military neat. His badge read M. Keller, his expression unreadable. What's happening back here? He asked, voice calm in a way that felt trained. Tanner seized the moment. Unruly passenger, interfering with crew. Lena didn't let him finish. She's the one you're speaking to, Officer Keller. And the only thing unruly here is his behavior toward 3 children. The co-pilot's gaze flicked to the triplets. 3 small faces pressed together, cheeks streaked with drying tears. His jaw tightened, but he kept his tone neutral. Dr. Carter will review everything after landing. After landing? Lena repeated. You're aware this is an ongoing violation. You have the authority to restrain a crew member under Title 18, Airway Safety. The man hesitated, eyes darting toward the cockpit door. Something passed between him and Tanner. An unspoken loyalty, passengers murmured. One woman whispered, He's with him. Lena's voice dropped. Are you, Mr. Keller? Keller's calm cracked just a hair. This flight needs peace, ma'am. Then stop protecting chaos, she said. He opened his mouth, but the intercom buzzed. Captain Harlow again, tense now. Report, Keller. Situation contained, Keller answered quickly. His phrasing was code. Lena caught it instantly. They were closing ranks. Malik equivalent? None. Skip. A teenage boy across the aisle stood, phone high. She's right, he hurt those kids. Another passenger joined. She's federal, man. We all heard it. Keller's composure frayed. Everyone sit down. No, Lena said, rising. Everyone stay right where you are. You're witnesses. Her voice carried the resonance of a courtroom. Passengers froze, not from fear, but from the realization that she was in command. Tanner lunged for her phone. Give me that device! A collective gasp. He barely reached before Keller grabbed his wrist. Not gently this time. Enough, Rob, he muttered. She's streaming to ground control. Lena blinked. Keller's tone had changed. He turned toward her, whispering fast. They rerouted your inspection flight for a reason. Someone wants this to explode before the policy review passes. She studied him. So you do know who I am? I read the passenger manifest. His voice dropped lower. But if I don't play along, they'll ground me too. For the first time, Compassion flickered behind her eyes. Then help me land this the right way. He nodded once, crisp and small. Give me your badge ID, she recited it. He relayed it to the cockpit. Moments later, the captain's voice came through again, strained. Copy verified clearance code. Proceed under Protocol C-17. Cabin is yours, Dr. Carter. A murmur rolled through the plane. Approval, relief, disbelief. Tanner staggered back. What is this? You can't... Lena turned toward him, expression unreadable. I told you there'd be security waiting. You just met it mid-air. Keller unhooked the restraint cuffs from his belt. Mr. Tanner, for safety reasons, you're relieved of duty. Take a seat in row 31. The passengers broke into soft applause, a sound of collective exhale. For the first time since takeoff, the triplets smiled. Small, trembling, brave. Lena knelt beside them. It's almost over, she whispered. Almost. But as she looked down the aisle, she noticed a man in business class tapping rapidly on a laptop, a subtle badge glinting beneath his jacket. Aviation Union Council. He was already drafting a statement. Damage control had begun before justice even landed. Lena straightened, eyes narrowing. This isn't just one man's cruelty, she murmured. It's a system rehearsing its excuses. The seatbelt sign pinged again. The captain's voice returned, steady but grim. Dr. Carter, ground control has requested immediate contact. They want your official statement transmitted before touchdown. She glanced at Keller. Patch me in. The intercom clicked live. Her calm voice filled the aircraft. This is Dr. Lena Carter. For the record, I am documenting an in-flight civil rights breach. Evidence secured. Witnesses present. Perpetrator detained. Outside, clouds parted. The coastline shimmered below. 30,000 feet of silence, waiting for consequence. Keller leaned toward her, whispering, When we land, they'll try to bury this. Lena's reply was barely audible, but sharp as steel. Then I'll make the sky testify. The wheels screamed against the runway, a violent sound that seemed to shake the whole cabin. The passengers burst into applause, part relief, part nervous energy. But Dr. Lena Carter didn't move. Her eyes stayed fixed on the tarmac beyond the window, where flashing blue lights were already waiting. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Atlanta International, the captain announced, voice tight. Please remain seated until instructed. He didn't say why. He didn't need to. The entire cabin could see uniformed security, airline executives in suits, and a line of ground crew vehicles idling beside gate B-14. Keller unbuckled and leaned toward Lena. They're pulling the flight for incident review. No media, no passengers off until legal arrives. Lena nodded. Expected. Cameras ready? Half the cabin lifted their phones in silent reply. Small glowing dots filled the dim light like stars. Tanner, cuffed in row 31, hissed under his breath. You think they'll believe you? They'll believe their own. Lena turned, calm as ever. That's why I brought witnesses. The door opened with a hydraulic sigh. 3 officials boarded. 2 men in black suits. 1 woman with an airline badge clipped to her jacket. The woman's tone was practiced neutrality. Dr. Carter, I'm Legal Officer Dana Pierce. Company policy requires a private debrief before you disembark. Lena rose slowly. Company policy doesn't override federal oversight. Pierce blinked, recovering quickly. We just want to make this right. Then let your passengers leave, Lena said. All of them. Pierce hesitated. Security protocol isn't an excuse for false imprisonment. The murmurs grew louder. A child began to cry. Keller stepped forward, voice crisp. Captain has confirmed she holds clearance under Code C-17. You'll want to cooperate. Pierce's composure cracked for the first time. This will go viral, she whispered. It already has, Lena said. Keller opened the door wider. Ladies and gentlemen, please exit calmly. The aisle filled with movement, relieved, indignant, filming everything. As the triplets passed the restrained attendant, Nala looked up at him and said, barely louder than a breath, You shouldn't have been mean in the sky. The man's face collapsed into shame. Outside, humid air rushed in. Reporters were already gathering behind the barricades, microphones thrust forward. Lena shielded her daughters, guiding them down the steps with quiet precision. A security officer approached. "Dr. Carter, this way. Ground Command wants you in the terminal conference suite." Inside, the sterile room buzzed with tension. Airline lawyers, PR agents, 2 federal marshals. At the center sat a man in an immaculate suit, silver-haired, smiling without warmth. "I'm Evan Drake, counsel for the board. Let's resolve this professionally." Lena set her bag down. "Professionalism ended when your employee spat on a child." He clasped his hands. "We'll of course compensate your family, confidentially," Keller muttered. "That's their playbook." Lena leaned forward. "I'm not here for hush money. I'm here for accountability. You'll issue a public apology, suspend the captain and crew pending investigation, and turn over all cockpit and cabin recordings to the Civil Rights Bureau within 24 hours. Drake's smile thinned. "Or what?" She slid her phone across the table. On the screen, a live feed showing thousands watching the hearing room via mirrored stream. "Or the internet finishes this conversation for us." Silence. The PR agent's pen clattered to the floor. Drake exhaled. "You understand what you're doing could cost this airline billions." "Then you should have trained your staff in decency," Lena replied. A knock at the door. A marshal entered. "Ma'am, the Secretary of Transportation is on line 1. They're requesting your formal statement for national review." Lena straightened, smoothing her jacket. "Patch it through." As the call connected, she caught Keller's eye. "You did the right thing," she said quietly. He nodded. "You made it possible." Through the speaker came a composed female voice. "Dr. Carter, thank you for your courage. Effective immediately, all in-flight discrimination cases will be subject to federal audit. You've changed protocol." Lena closed her eyes briefly. The weight of 1,000 small injustices seemed to lift an inch. When she opened them, she looked at her daughters waiting outside the glass wall, holding hands. "Then let's make sure this sky belongs to them now," she said. The next morning, Geneva blue dawn washed across Atlanta's skyline, softening the hard glass of corporate towers. Dr. Lena Carter hadn't slept. Her daughters were safe in a hotel suite under federal protection, but her mind kept replaying the flight. Not the spit, not the fear, but the quiet faces of passengers realizing what power looked like when it finally stayed calm. Her phone vibrated. Urgent. Internal briefing. Civil Rights Bureau. Inside the marble lobby, officials greeted her with forced smiles. A conference table gleamed under 2 bright lights. Folders lined its surface like props. Deputy Director Foster, her superior, gestured toward a seat. "Lena, extraordinary work. You've drawn global attention. Now we need containment." "Containment?" she asked, voice sharp. "We need reform." Foster's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Public anger burns fast. The Bureau will release a statement, citing an isolated incident, and commend the airline for cooperation. We can't afford panic in transportation stocks." The words hit harder than turbulence. "You're protecting investors," she said slowly. "Not children." He sighed. "Be pragmatic. Take the commendation. They'll offer you a consulting contract. You'll have influence quietly." Lena looked around the table. Men and women in expensive suits avoided her gaze. "So the agency investigating the airline owns shares in it," she murmured. No one denied it. The silence confirmed everything. She rose. "You're confirming obstruction of justice on federal property." "Don't exaggerate," Foster said. "We're aligning optics." "Optics," she repeated. "That's the word people use when they can't say truth." He pushed a folder toward her. "Sign the statement, Lena. End this cleanly." She opened it. Inside were pre-typed lines calling the event an unfortunate misunderstanding stemming from heightened emotions. At the bottom, her name, already printed. Her fingers hovered above the pen, but instead she slid the paper back across the table. "You already ended it, dirty." Then she lifted her phone, its red light blinking. "You're on record." Gasps rippled around the room. Foster's chair scraped back. "You wouldn't—" "Already did," she said. "Yesterday I mirrored every internal bureau server. Your meeting is live streaming to the same network that carried the plane footage. Congratulations, gentlemen. You're trending." A young analyst at the far end of the table dropped his coffee, eyes wide. She's serious. She bypassed the firewall. Foster lunged toward her, but two marshals at the doorway stepped in. Keller stood behind them, now wearing a federal badge. "Orders from the secretary," he said. "Proceed with transparency protocol." The room erupted. Phones buzzed. Reporters outside the bureau building were already quoting her feed. Foster sank back into his chair, pale. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Lena met his gaze steadily. "I've grounded hypocrisy." Keller handed her a secure tablet. On the screen, messages flooded in. Airlines, unions, passengers, even foreign ministers demanding reform. The truth had outflown their containment plan. Foster slumped. "They'll shut this bureau down. Then we'll build one that belongs to the people," she said. Security escorted him out, the flash of cameras chasing his fall. As the doors closed, Keller exhaled. "You just declared war on half the transport industry." Lena smoothed her jacket. "No, I just declared humanity in first class. Outside, protesters already lined the street. Flight attendants in uniform, passengers with torn passport posters, children holding signs that read, 'Let us land equal.' Sirens wailed in the distance, but the morning sun cut through the noise like a verdict. Lena stepped into the light, a quiet smile forming. The next phase wasn't survival, it was reconstruction. The next 48 hours were chaos wrapped in politeness. Airlines issued identical statements. Networks debated tone instead of truth. Lena Carter's name filled headlines. Hero in one corner, troublemaker in another. Hashtags rose, vanished, rose again. By Monday, the counter-narrative arrived. A morning host smiled into the camera. "New leaks suggest Dr. Carter exaggerated events on Flight 91 to promote her upcoming book." Images flashed. Her calm face frozen mid-sentence, edited to look defiant. The smear campaign had begun. At the bureau, Keller burst into her office. They're flooding feeds with AI-doctored clips. "They'll say you attacked the attendant." Lena closed the laptop she'd been typing on. "Let them. Every algorithm leaves fingerprints." He frowned. "You already planned for this?" "I studied manipulation for 15 years, she said. "They're predictable." She tapped a key and brought up a hidden dashboard. Lines of code pulsed across continents. "Before the tribunal locked my clearance, I built Mirrorwing, a server that archives every unedited stream before corporations touch it. It's mirrored in 3 countries. Keller leaned closer. "You have the raw footage?" "Every frame. An alert pinged, unauthorized subpoena, Mirrorwing target node." The corporations had discovered her insurance file. "Then we release it," he said. "Not yet. If we dump it now, they'll spin it as revenge." We wait for the hearing. Outside, protesters chanted below the bureau windows. Reporters crowded the steps. Aides rushed in with new polls. Public trust divided. Airline stock rising. Money was winning again. That night, Keller walked her to her car. "You could leave town," he said. "Take the girls somewhere quiet until this burns out." Lena looked up at the sky. Planes tracing faint silver scars through the dark. "If I leave, they win twice. Once for the girls they humiliated, and once for every passenger who decided silence is safer." At dawn, she returned to the bureau, escorted by marshals. The oversight committee awaited in the main hall. Rows of cameras, senators, and corporate lobbyists hiding behind empathy. Senator Acker adjusted his microphone. "Dr. Carter, did you authorize illegal data transmission from a federal network?" Lena folded her hands. "I authorized truth. It travels better without permission slips." The audience gasped softly. The senator smiled. "You understand the gravity of exposing government communications." "Yes," she said. "I also understand the gravity of spitting on a 9-year-old and calling it procedure." He cleared his throat. "We're here to discuss your methods, not your emotions." Lena glanced toward the cameras. "My methods are documentation. My emotion is evidence." The chairman rapped his gavel. "Enough rhetoric. Dr. Carter, present your proof or withdraw your accusations." Keller slid her a drive no larger than a coin. She inserted it into the console. The screens behind the committee flickered, then bloomed with crisp, unedited video. The entire flight from 4 angles, audio intact. The truth unfolded silently. Tanner's voice, the spit, the gasp of passengers, the calm of a mother cleaning her child's face. The room went still. Even the lobbyists stared. Lena spoke into the quiet. This is Mirrorwing's raw feed, time-stamped, encrypted, witnessed by 200 passengers. Your edited version claimed I fabricated assault. This version proves who did. Senator Acker's hand trembled as he switched off his mic. Who authorized? I did, she said. Because transparency doesn't need authorization. It needs courage. From the back of the chamber, applause began, hesitant at first, then rolling forward like a tide. Reporters stood, cameras whirring. Across the globe, millions watched live. Lena turned toward Keller. Send the rest of the archive to the press. He grinned. Already flying. The chairman's gavel struck again, but the sound was swallowed by cheers. Lena Carter had just grounded the narrative. The hearing adjourned in pandemonium. Senators shouted over each other, aides hurried to phones, and the public feed carried it all unfiltered. In the chaos, Lena Carter remained seated, hands folded, expression serene. The moment the gavel fell for recess, Keller leaned toward her. They're panicking. Half the committee's resigning before the press conference. Let them, she said quietly. Resignation is just truth catching up. Outside, the plaza filled with chants. Grounded by grace. Let the sky testify. Reporters pushed microphones forward as Lena exited, her daughters at her side for the first time since the flight. Flashbulbs snapped. The girls blinked, confused by the storm of sound. Lena knelt between them. Breathe. All this noise means the world's finally listening. A journalist called out, Dr. Carter, what happens next? Next, she replied, we fly differently. That afternoon, an emergency summit convened in Washington. Airline CEOs, union leaders, and government officials crowded into a secure auditorium. Screens displayed 3 words. Civil Airspace Act, draft. One Reeve from the tribunal days joined remotely, face lit by the glow of a dozen time zones. You forced our hand, she told Lena. We're codifying equality at altitude. Lena read the preamble aloud. Every passenger is a citizen above borders. Discrimination in transit is a crime without altitude limits. She looked up, eyes wet. This is bigger than one flight. It's every flight, Reeve said. The vote passed unanimously. Cameras captured the signing. Keller standing beside her, the triplets watching from the front row, their small hands clasped. News networks cut from the ceremony to global airports. Flight attendants hugging, passengers applauding, an elderly man in Tokyo holding a sign that read, "We all land equal." For the first time, justice didn't end with applause. It travelled. That evening, Lena and Keller stepped outside onto the Capitol steps. The air smelled of rain and jet fuel. Keller handed her a folder, final transcripts. The bureau's dissolving. They want you to lead the new division. She took it, but didn't open it. I'm not sure leadership should always look like me. He smiled. Maybe leadership just looks like accountability now. Down the steps, the triplets chased one another in circles, their laughter echoing off stone. Nala ran back, breathless. Mom, can we fly again? Lena crouched to her height. Someday soon, she said, when the sky feels safe again. Will it? The girl asked. Lena looked upward. The clouds glowed pink with sunset, soft trails weaving across them. It already started. Hours later, back in her hotel, Lena opened her laptop one final time. Emails flooded in. Thank yous from strangers, invitations to conferences, apologies from airline staff she'd never met. She scrolled through them until one stopped her. From R. Tanner. Subject: no excuse. Message: I was wrong. I've been watching everything. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want to testify for your daughters, if you'll let me. She read it twice, then closed the computer gently. Forgiveness, she thought, wasn't a requirement of justice, but understanding, that was progress. She stood by the window, the city lights below blinking like distant runways. Planes rose and fell, their lights threading through the night. Keller's voice echoed from her memory. "You just declared humanity in first class." Lena smiled faintly. "No," she whispered to the glass. "I declared it everywhere." The reflection of her daughters sleeping in the next room shimmered behind her. For the first time in weeks, she felt the steady rhythm of peace. Engines in the distance, wind brushing the glass, a heartbeat syncing with the world's justice had landed. 3 weeks later, the echo of the hearing had spread across the planet. Airports were quieter now, not silent but aware. On digital billboards above the gates, new messages pulsed in soft blue. Respect is procedure. Every training module carried Dr. Lena Carter's guidelines. Inside the new Civil Airspace Division headquarters, light poured through glass walls. The space had none of the grey heaviness of the old bureau. No locked doors, no secrecy. Lena walked its halls with a clipboard and a calm that people followed without question. Reporters still tried to turn her into a symbol, but she preferred to be an engineer of change. Symbols freeze, she told her staff. Systems move. Each morning began with case reviews. Real people whose complaints had once been dismissed as misunderstandings. Now, every file received a hearing within 24 hours. Keller headed investigations. Reeve chaired international outreach. The triplets attended a small private school nearby, their walls covered in drawings of airplanes with smiling faces. On the first anniversary of the flight, Lena stood at the same Atlanta gate where it had begun. The terminal hummed with ordinary life, families boarding, announcements echoing, luggage wheels singing against tile. The airline had invited her to speak. She declined the podium and instead sat among passengers, speaking through the intercom when boarding paused. "You don't know me," she began. "But a year ago this gate became a mirror. We saw who we were and who we wanted to be. Let's keep choosing the second one." The crowd applauded quietly. Some cried. Back in her office that evening, she reviewed a report labeled Post-Incident Compliance Metrics. Discrimination complaints down 73%. Passenger confidence up 40%. The numbers mattered less than the stories beneath them. A pilot who intervened in time. A crew who apologized before being asked. A child who wasn't afraid to fly again. Her daughters visited after school, dropping backpacks on her couch. Nala waved a certificate. "Mom, our class wrote letters to you." Lena smiled. "What did you tell them?" Amira answered first. "That you made airplanes safe," Zuri added. "That you made adults listen." Lena's throat tightened. Maybe both are the same thing. She walked them to the window overlooking the runways. Outside, a plane lifted into the golden dusk, engines steady, contrails pure white. "See that?" she said softly. "That sound means people going home, not being judged." The girls pressed their faces to the glass, watching until the plane became a spark. Behind her, Keller appeared in the doorway. "You still working?" "Always," she said, half smiling. He handed her a folder. "International adoption of the Act just hit 20 nations. They're calling it the Carter Accord," Lena sighed. "That wasn't the point." "Maybe not," he said. "But it's what they needed to remember the point." Outside, the sky deepened from amber to blue. Lena closed the file and leaned against the window, her daughter's reflections beside her, the glow of taxi lights moving below like constellations. For the first time, the world above the clouds and the one below them felt connected. Justice, gravity and grace sharing the same air. By autumn, the ripple reached farther than anyone had expected. Airports from Lagos to Lisbon were flying new banners. The Carter standards in effect. Uniforms carried badges stitched with a small silver wing crossed by a circle. Equality without borders. In a Paris terminal, a flight attendant knelt to help a crying child pick up spilled toys. In Seoul, a pilot gave a pre-flight message about dignity at altitude. Across continents, tiny moments of decency replaced policies written in fear. None of it made headlines. That was the point. Lena watched these fragments from her Geneva office where the International Transport Council now met. Every month she joined by hologram, speaking less and listening more. Her mantra had spread. Design systems for respect, not reaction. Keller dropped a folder on her desk. Complaints down another 30%. Training budgets quadrupled. You've turned bureaucracy into empathy, she smiled. Then maybe empathy's a better investment. They walked together through the corridor, lined with world clocks. Under each city's name, a plaque quoted passengers who'd once filed reports. They believed me. My son wants to be a pilot now. You built a museum of voices, Keller said. They built it, she corrected. I just made space. That evening she spoke at a youth conference streamed live to schools. Her daughters sat in the front row wearing matching blue scarves. She told the students, "Justice isn't a thunderclap. It's a steady hum. Keep it running." When applause came, she gestured toward the triplets. They taught me that calm can be louder than rage. Later, walking home along the lake, the city lights shimmered like grounded stars. Malik, now head of training media, called from another time zone. "We're adapting the Carter modules for maritime crews," he said. "Apparently ships needed them too," Lena laughed. "Looks like the ocean's next." News of her reforms inspired new legislation: rail, maritime, digital travel rights. For the first time, an international coalition agreed that discrimination in transit was a violation of human movement itself. But progress had its shadows. Corporations tried subtle sabotage, delays, loopholes, alternate definitions. Lena refused to fight in headlines. She answered each obstacle with documentation, clarity, and patience, until resistance simply tired of itself. One afternoon she received a call from Tanner, the disgraced attendant. "They let me train new hires," he said. "I show them the clip every week." "That takes courage," she replied. "Not as much as you think." Watching that child's face was enough. She hung up and stared at the framed passport fragment on her shelf. Beside it lay a letter from the president of the International Civil Council, inviting her to chair a permanent ethics board. She set it aside for later. That night, the triplets joined her on the balcony. Nala pointed upward. "That one's going to New York," Zuri added. "And that one's coming from Nairobi," Amira asked. "Where are we going next, Mom?" Lena wrapped her arms around them. "Anywhere we want." The sky above Geneva filled with crossing contrails that glowed pink in the setting sun, drawing invisible bridges between continents. For once, the horizon looked less like a boundary and more like a beginning. 2 years later, the world had grown quieter in a new way. Airports still buzzed. Flights still roared skyward. But the edges were softer, the exchanges gentler. Every boarding gate now carried a digital plaque. Civil Airspace Act. Adopted 94 nations. Dr. Lena Carter had stepped down from her post 6 months earlier. She'd refused another term, saying, "A system that depends on one voice isn't stable. Let it breathe." Her successor, a young woman from Nairobi, often sent her updates, snapshots of new crews training under the Carter model, children touring aviation museums built in her name. From her cottage on the outskirts of Geneva, Lena taught occasional virtual seminars, lectured at universities, and spent most afternoons in her garden. The triplets, now 12, had grown taller, bolder, endlessly curious. They teased her about how everyone still whispered her story in terminals, as though she were myth instead of memory. One summer morning, an envelope arrived without return address. Inside was a photo. 3 young flight attendants holding hands in a training hall, captioned in marker, "We start every shift with your line. Respect is procedure." Lena smiled. She pinned it beside the framed passport fragment. The paper had yellowed slightly, but the torn edges still spoke louder than any medal could. That afternoon, she and Keller met for coffee near the river. He had more grey in his hair, more peace in his voice. "The ethics board wants to dedicate the Geneva terminal to you," he said. "The Dr. Carter concourse," she laughed. "That's a mouthful." "They think people should remember." "They already do," she said. gesturing to the families around them. Children dragging suitcases, crews greeting passengers with easy warmth. "This is enough," he studied her quietly. "Do you ever regret fighting so publicly?" "Only that it took a fight at all," she said. "But sometimes the world needs to see a mother stand up so it knows what standing looks like." As dusk settled, the bells from the cathedral across the water began to ring. The triplets joined them, waving postcards they'd designed for a school project, each one showing 3 girls on an airplane with the words, "Everyone has a seat." Lena looked down at them, at their unbroken innocence, and felt something shift. For years, she had carried the weight of that flight, the faces, the tension, the flashbulbs. Now, watching her daughters chase pigeons across the plaza, she realized the story had landed. It belonged to history, and to them. Later that night, she wrote a final journal entry. Justice isn't loud anymore. It moves quietly through everyday acts. A hand offered, a tone corrected, a policy rewritten. The sky didn't change color, but it learned how to see everyone beneath it. She placed the notebook beside her window. Outside, a plane crossed the moon's reflection, soundless, steady. Somewhere inside that cabin, a child might have been looking out, unafraid. Lena whispered, "Safe travels," and turned off the light. In the stillness, the world she'd fought to create kept moving. Steady, ordinary, kind. Winter returned with soft snow falling over the lake. From her window, Lena Carter could see the reflection of city lights dancing on the water like restless dreams. It was quiet enough now to hear the world breathe, a rhythm she had almost forgotten. The days were slow by choice. Morning tea, letters from colleagues, afternoons spent reading on the porch. The triplets filled the house with motion, school stories, laughter, music lessons that turned into improvised concerts. The chaos was ordinary and beautiful. One afternoon, Amira burst into the living room clutching a school flyer. "They're doing a project on heroes," she said. "Everyone wants to pick you." Lena smiled. "Then tell them to pick someone else. Heroes make the news. Helpers make the difference." "But you were both," Nala said quietly. Lena knelt beside her. "Sweetheart, I was just a mother who refused to stay quiet." The rest was noise. Outside, Keller's car pulled into the driveway. He'd stayed in Geneva as liaison for the council and still visited on weekends. When he stepped inside, the girls tackled him with hugs. He carried 3 paper airplanes made of silver foil. "Found these in a gift shop," he said. "Figured every aviator family needs them." Lena placed one on the mantel beside the framed passport piece. The contrast, broken paper, folded silver, said everything she couldn't. That evening, after the girls were asleep, she and Keller sat by the fire. "Do you ever miss it?" he asked. "The meetings, the hearings, the rush?" She shook her head. "I miss believing the world needs shouting. Turns out it listens better to calm," he smiled. "That's your gift, turning fury into focus." She stirred the fire with a poker, sparks drifting upward. "Sometimes I wonder if we changed enough. People still hurt. There are still flights where bias whispers before boarding. Change doesn't erase pain," Keller said. "It teaches people to recognize it faster." She leaned back, letting the firelight soften the years in her face. "Then maybe that's all justice really is, teaching recognition." They fell into easy silence. Outside, snow kept falling, muffling every sound but the faint hum of a jet passing overhead. Lena looked up through the window, following the faint blinking light until it disappeared into clouds. In that moment, she thought of every face she had seen from that first flight. The frightened girls, the passengers who found courage, even the broken flight attendant who had written her from rehabilitation. They were all part of the same constellation now, imperfect but connected. She whispered a small prayer, not for revenge, not even for peace, but for continuity. "Let the next voice speak when mine grows quiet," she murmured. Keller heard but didn't answer. He didn't need to. The next morning, sunlight poured across the snow. The triplets' laughter carried down the hallway as they packed for school. Before they left, Zuri ran back to hug her mother. "We have to write about what bravery means," she said. "I said it's when you do the right thing before you're sure you can." Lena smiled through sudden tears. Then you already understand more than I did at your age. When the door closed behind them, she stood for a long moment in the quiet house, looking at the silver planes on the mantel. The world had learned to fly differently, and so had she. The fire had gone out, but the warmth remained. By early spring, the thaw returned to Geneva. Rain replaced snow, and the lake breathed mist in the mornings. Lena's inbox filled with letters she hadn't expected. Some written in looping cursive, others translated from languages she could not read without help. Each one began the same way. You don't know me, but your story reached us. A teacher from Manila described a student who refused to board a plane until her father apologized for a racial slur, and then boarded with her head held high. A flight attendant from Johannesburg wrote, I used to keep silent. Now I intervene. And a mother from Texas sent a photograph of her son's first flight alone, captioned, he wasn't afraid. Lena read each note slowly, as though the ink itself carried the breath of those who had waited for dignity to become routine. She pinned a few to a corkboard in the kitchen. Her daughters began adding postcards from their own pen pals, until the board turned into a patchwork of voices. One evening, Keller visited with a small production crew. He was helping a documentary team record testimony for the Civil Airspace Archive. Tell them the truth, he said quietly, as the camera lights warmed the room. Not the headlines, how it actually felt. Lena hesitated, then faced the lens. It felt small, she said. It felt like breathing while everyone else forgot to. People call it courage, but it was clarity. I could see what silence would cost my daughters. The interviewer asked, What did justice give you in return? She thought for a long time. Perspective, she said finally. Justice isn't victory, it's alignment. The world shifted just enough for the next person to stand a little straighter. After the filming, she and Keller walked along the quay. Boats bobbed against the docks, lanterns swaying in the cool wind. Do you ever wish the world would stop reminding you? He asked. Reminders are how we remember we're still responsible, she replied. But I've learned to let them land softly. Back home, the triplets were building a model airplane out of recycled cardboard. Amira painted the tail fin silver. Zuri wrote Triplet 1 on the wing. Nala added small stick figures waving from the windows. When they finished, they asked their mother to name it. Lena traced the paper fuselage with her finger. Call it Grace, she said, because grace flies even when it's heavy. They laughed and hung it above their beds, the string invisible in the dim light, so that it looked like it was truly airborne. Weeks later, she travelled to a symposium in Nairobi, the first she'd accepted in nearly a year. When she stepped on stage, she saw faces from every continent. A young steward in uniform stood and saluted her before sitting again. In that moment, she realized the story no longer belonged to her. It had become a vocabulary everyone could use. Her closing words were simple. Justice doesn't retire, it travels. The crowd rose, not in ovation, but in collective stillness, the kind that feels like prayer. That night in her hotel, she wrote a letter to herself. You did not fix the sky. You taught it how to look back without shame. You taught your daughters that calm is not weakness. And you taught strangers to see themselves in one another. She folded the page and tucked it into her passport, a quiet symmetry between beginning and return. When she landed home the next day, the girls were waiting at arrivals with handmade signs that read, Welcome back. Mom, we kept the skies safe. Lena laughed, hugging them tightly. Above their heads, another flight lifted into the blue, its engines sounding less like thunder and more like a promise kept. 10 years later, the world had caught up with what one quiet voice began. Airplanes hummed cleaner now. Airports sounded softer, and every new employee still recited the same line before their first flight. Respect is procedure. Dr. Lena Carter no longer travelled for meetings. She lived in a small coastal town in Portugal, a place where the air smelled of salt and orange blossoms. The triplets, now 19, were scattered across continents. Amira studying aeronautical law in London, Zuri working with humanitarian pilots in Nairobi, Nala teaching music to refugee children in Athens. Each carried the story like DNA but rarely mentioned it. They didn't have to. The world already spoke its language. Every morning, Lena walked to the cliffs and watched the planes pass overhead. She could tell the make and altitude by sound, a skill she never lost. Sometimes she waved. It was her private prayer, that everyone inside arrived safely and left someone kinder. Letters still found her. A captain who'd once trained under her wrote, "My crew quotes you more than the manual." A child born the year of the incident sent a drawing of 3 girls standing under an open sky. And every December, Keller mailed a postcard that simply read, "Altitude steady." One afternoon, a journalist tracked her down for a 10th anniversary piece. "Do you ever think of that day?" the young woman asked, recorder blinking red. "Every time I fly," Lena said. "Not as trauma, just reminder." What would you tell people who still believe one person can't change a system? Lena smiled. Systems are built by people pretending they're not powerful. Stop pretending. The interview went viral again, though she barely noticed. She was more interested in her garden's first oranges and the messages her daughters sent from faraway time zones. One evening, she sat by the shore as dusk rolled in. The horizon burned gold, then indigo. A plane curved through the sunset, contrail glowing briefly before fading into twilight. She thought of all the flights that had followed, millions of strangers crossing the same invisible sky she once challenged to see. Her phone buzzed with a video call request. The screen filled with 3 familiar faces, older now but carrying the same mischief. "Mom," Amira said, "they're dedicating the Air Rights Archive to you. We're speaking tomorrow. Any advice?" "Tell them the truth," Lena said. "That justice isn't an achievement. It's a maintenance schedule. Keep checking the engines." They laughed, and for a moment the years between them disappeared. After the call, she stayed outside until stars replaced the planes. The sea's rhythm merged with the pulse in her wrist, steady and sure. She whispered the same words she had spoken to her daughters on the plane long ago. "You are home, always." A wind rose from the Atlantic, warm and gentle. It lifted the edge of her scarf and carried it upward for a heartbeat before letting it fall again, like the sky itself nodding back. Inside, she wrote her final journal entry on thick cream paper. The world did not change overnight. It turned one act at a time until kindness became habit. I used to believe flight was about distance. Now I know it's about perspective. From above, we are all arrivals. She placed the notebook beside the old framed passport fragment. The tear line was still visible, but under the glass it looked like a seam stitched shut. Outside, another aircraft crossed the moon, its light small but unwavering. Somewhere on that flight, a mother tucked her child under a blanket. A crew member smiled without fear, and the engines carried them forward through equal air. Lena exhaled slowly, the sound blending with the sea. The story that had once shaken the skies ended where it began, with calm, dignity, and flight restored. And above it all, justice kept breathing.